Okay, next we're going to do quotes from Mahatma Gandhi. I didn't include Mahatma Gandhi in my book, but I sort of came across his name while I was doing this, and I'm like, well, gee, I ought to study him a little bit, okay? So I'm no expert on Mahatma Gandhi. I'm no expert on India. I know a lot of Indian doctors who are very nice, but I don't know that much about India. I've never been there, okay? I do know some people that went there, and they were forced to take these malaria medications, and they had terrible complications from them. They had neurologic side effects from them. Okay. And I have another friend who had a friend that went there, and he had severe neurologic side effects from them. Okay, and those medications. Some of those medications are quite dangerous. Okay, so here's some Mahatma Gandhi. He does have some great quotes. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. That's kind of like, like Jesus there, turn the other cheek, to the adulterous woman, let her go. He who is without stone, may he cast the first stone. So there's a lot of good things here. Gandhi says, I believe it is impossible to end hatred with hatred. That's good stuff too. Forgive and forget. Benefit of the doubt. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Gandhi then says, power is of two kinds. One is obtained by fear of punishment, and the other by acts of love. Power based on love is 1,000 times more effective and permanent than one derived by fear of punishment. Now that's an interesting quote because that's the exact opposite of what Machiavelli said in his book, The Prince. Machiavelli in his book, The Prince, said it is better to be feared than loved, for men are fickle, and you can't trust their love, but their fear will remain. Okay, Gandhi continues. He says, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. I also saw one version of the quote where it says, in how it treats its animals. Okay, but that's nice. He says, if we wish to create a lasting peace, we must begin with the children. Yes, and that reminds me of the Will Durant quote where Will Durant had said, if you want people in society to have morals, you have to teach them religion. And you have to teach morals with religion. And he says, if you want them to understand it, you have to teach them to when they're young. And it has to be taught with religion. Otherwise, they will not have morals, and you just have a brutal, dishonest society. Okay, and I think there's truth in that. And other people have said religion is the most important thing, because if children are taught religion when they're young, Christian religion, they'll be much more likely to be, they'll never be perfect, but they'll be a lot better than they would be without it, and I think that is true. Okay, so anyways, let's continue with the Gandhi quotes. He says, you should be the change that you wish to see in the world. A healthy discontent is the prelude to progress. The good man is the friend of all living things. The main purpose of life is to live rightly, think rightly, act rightly. The soul must languish when we give all our thought to the body. Okay, and I get a little bit of a sense that he was sort of glorified after he died and sort of cleaned up, okay? But, he did do a great thing helping India to become free, and he did say a lot of good things, and he did do a lot of good things, but there's more to him than just all that. More quotes from Gandhi. An education which does not teach us to discriminate between good and bad, to assimilate the good and to avoid the other is not a real education. Yeah, that's exactly what education should be. Education should be very judgmental. All this BS about tolerance and non-judgmental, that's all BS. That's all designed to destroy, the Western world, okay? So anybody who has a brain in their head will say this. Good education teaches you judgment. Oil is bad for your health to eat oil. Fruits, veggies, starches are good for your health. Okay, that's making a judgment. And you have to have judgments. That's how you make every decision in your life, is to judge things. Okay, Gandhi continues. There is no school equal to a decent home and no teacher equal to a virtuous parent. That's good. That's also true. He wanted women to be at home with their kids, okay? And I actually think kids would be a lot better off if they were home with their mommies rather than going to these public schools, which are a freaking disaster, try to destroy them, turn them into atheists, turn them against their parents, castrate them, turn them into snitches against their parents, all kinds of terrible things. The more you study the public schools, the more you'll hate them. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of nice teachers who do their best to help the kids, but the school system itself is designed to destroy children, not to help them. Okay, Gandhi continues. Our greatest ability as humans is not to change the world, but to change ourselves. If you want to change the world, start with yourself. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. The simplest acts of kindness are by far more powerful than 1,000 heads bowing in prayer. I would agree with that statement. The idea that, I don't think, monks in a monastery are really doing that much good. Yeah, you can pray 3 times a day. Whoop-de-doo. Why don't you get out and help people, okay? what you do for other people is more important than saying a prayer. Yeah, it's good that you pray, but in life, people need you to do stuff. Okay? Gandhi's next quote: watch your beliefs, for they become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. And watch your habits, for they become your destiny. Okay. A good chain of events. Persistent questioning and healthy inquisitiveness are the first requisite for acquiring learning of any kind. Yeah, that's all a good thing. Asking questions progresses you towards the truth. We reach the truth asymptotically. Okay? Okay, basic education links. And by the way, this is going to get more and more interesting. I'm sort of warming up here. I went and did some reading on Gandhi. Okay? Basic education links the children, whether of the cities, of the villages, to all that is best and lasting in India. I agree with that too. People should be taught about the great achievements of their country, of the people of their country in earlier history. Notice that in the United States, they do the opposite. Instead of teaching you that, Thomas Jefferson was an incredible, great genius, they try to tell you, the founding fathers were racist slave owners. You know what? Study him. Read David Barton on Thomas Jefferson. You'd be amazed what a great man he was. George Washington was a great man, okay? Ben Franklin was a brilliant man, okay? There were a lot of other good men. Samuel Adams, there were a lot of good men amongst the founding fathers. America is the greatest country ever founded in the history of the world. You can read about Ayn Rand, what she thought about him. It was just magnificent. Read Ann Coulter's comparison of the American Revolution in 1776 versus the French Revolution, around 1790. Okay, there's no comparison. America was great. It was Christian. It was about freedom, okay? France was the opposite. The French Revolution was almost like, the fall of the Bastille was almost like, cow, then, the next word, of course, moon, then east, okay? It was bad. Destruction, they killed all the priests and the nuns. It was awful. The Guillot, and then teen. Okay, French was bad. All right. So anyways, continuing with Gandhi. He wanted people to be patriotic and take pride in India. I think that's a good thing. All countries should do that. He said, to forget how to dig the earth and to tend the soil is to forget ourselves. That sounds like Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson thought we should be a nation primarily of small farmers. I'd agree with that. Imagine that if we were all small farmers, there would be no problems with the food supply. You could just get great food because they'd all be competing to provide better food. Ayn Rand had said it too. What makes a country great? You have to have laissez-faire capitalism because capitalism rewards reason. Capitalism rewards effort. It rewards meritocracy. It rewards quality of service. Whereas if you've got collectivism like in Soviet Russia, Ann Coulter would joke, collectivism, communism in Soviet Russia caused 70 years in a row of bad weather. And what is meant by that is they would tax the farmer so heavily, take almost all of their food they produced, that the farmer would just say, screw it, the weather's been bad, and they would produce as little as possible, just enough so their family wouldn't survive. And the men had nothing to do, so no hope, so they just had a tremendously high rate of alcoholism. It's a disaster. You hear that all the time. I know a bunch of people that grew up in communist-controlled countries, and it's very routine. They say, yeah, my father was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic. You hear that all the time. Okay, continuing with Gandhi. Okay, many people, especially ignorant people, want to punish you for speaking the truth, for being correct, for being you. Never apologize for being correct or for being years ahead of your time. Speak your mind, even if you are a minority of one. The truth is still the truth. Okay, all this stuff sounds good. It's not exactly all the stuff I got from studying his life, but it's good, and he did say some good things. And again, he did good things to help the people of India become more free. It is easy to stand in the crowd, but it takes courage to stand alone. All good thoughts and ideas mean nothing without action. Okay? Trust me, this talk's going somewhere that you're not expecting right now. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about some of the things that really happened. Other quotes by Gandhi. Learning takes us through many phases of life, but it fails utterly in the hour of danger and temptation. Then faith alone saves. Okay? For most of his life, Gandhi supported the caste system in India. And he actually, what people don't realize is they try to say all these religions are equal. They're not all equal. Okay? Hinduism is not like Christianity. 5 out of the 6 schools of Hinduism, the major Orthodox schools, according to some of these Indian writers. I don't know much myself about Hinduism. All I know is what these Indian writers, they're all from India, all the writers that I looked up. They say that 5 out of the 6 major schools of Indian philosophy and Hinduism, they're all atheists. Okay? So there is a component of Hinduism that can be theistic, believe in God, but the vast majority of it is atheist. And I read the book by Vishal Mangalwadi, he's this brilliant Indian guy, And he said, the book that changed the world. He says the most important thing he said that ever happened to India, in his opinion, Vishal Mangawadi, was that, the Christian missionaries came there and lots of people from India became Christian. Okay? And I can tell you, the greatest Christian Indian geniuses I've seen are the ones who become Christians, like Dinesh D'Souza. Okay? And the other thing too is I know lots of high IQ Indian doctors. They're very competent at going through the protocols of conventional medicine, okay? But you don't see them doing that many altruistic things, okay? Look at all the great pioneers of nutrition experts. None of them are Indian men that I'm aware of, okay? Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Fine. But what I don't see is, what I sort of see as a pattern is they're very competent. They do their job, they make their money, and they go spend time with their family, okay? They don't tend to get involved in all this altruistic stuff, from what I've seen. I might be wrong, but that's what I've seen in my many years of experience with them. And they don't have an interest in it, because I think Christianity makes you interested in the whole world and all people. And the other thing is, it creates an interest in joking. I got all my Indian friends, and I'm not that close with them, but I'm friends with them. They don't joke like Christians do. Christians are constantly telling jokes and swearing, and it gets kind of vulgar, but it's fun. When I talk to Christian guy friends, there's a lot of swearing and joking. I don't know that with my Indian friends. They don't do that, okay? Nor do my Asian friends do that. I know some really smart Asian guys, okay? They're very bright. One's an engineer. The other one's a really smart neuroradiologist. There's no joking. There's no playing word games with language or any of this stuff that I do automatically, okay? Okay, and somebody asked me just recently, how come I never talk about my Puerto Rican cousins, okay? I always talk about my Irish cousins. And I'm like, well, my Irish cousins are more bookish, okay? So I can talk about books with them. My father was more bookish, okay? But in reality, for my family, the Puerto Ricans are a lot smarter than the Irish in my family, okay? And they're also very vulgar. When I meet my Puerto Rican cousins, they make all these vulgar jokes all the time, and I think it's a lot of fun. That's how they are. They're very affectionate and warm, but they're constantly making vulgar jokes, and that's not really like the best subject for talking on these YouTube videos, okay? But they're distinct. They don't care that much about books or philosophy, even though a bunch of them are doctors and very smart. They're just not that bookish, okay? People don't need books. I mean, I love books. It's a big part of my life, but most people don't read. That's just a fact. And that includes most doctors. I know tons of doctors. I talk to a bunch of doctors every day, okay? The vast majority of them don't read, okay? My smarter guy friends read. Men read a lot more than women do. Okay? Everybody says men and women are the same. They are not the same at all. The woman is preoccupied with her kids. She wants to get done with work as fast as possible and go home to her kids. And you can't talk to a woman that much. If she's premenopausal, she thinks you're flirting with her, okay? So you really can't talk to her that much. So we don't, with guys, they have all these elaborate, detailed, philosophical conversations about medicine, about all kinds of things, okay? The modern world sort of feminizes everything, tries to pretend men and women are the same. They are not at all, okay? And you don't really have girlfriends the way you have guy friends, okay? You can be in love with a girl and be as close, as tight as everything for years, and all of a sudden you break up and you never speak to them again. You don't call them up and talk as friends. No, you never speak to them again. So it's not the same as guys and women. Not the same at all. Okay, so anyways, continuing with Gandhi, okay? For most of his life, actually for his whole life, he supported the caste system in India, as far as I could tell. And it's built into Hinduism. The Varna hierarchy, it's built into Hinduism. So that's what I'm trying to say. People try to say, the white Christians of America, they're so racist. Oh, give me a frickin' break. Why does every minority in the world want to come to a Western Christian country? Because it's the least racist of any country. You try walking into most of these other countries, they're going to say, get out, okay? You come to America, you're welcome. They'll even pay your bills for you, okay? So that's just a fact. Tons of people all over the world for the last, 100-something years, they all want to move to Western Christian countries because they make nice countries and they're nice to people, okay? Nobody wants to move to these other countries. Watch videos of people in India with men swarming around the women. Watch videos of Western women when they're surrounded by men from some of these other religions who are grabbing them, squeezing their buttocks, and then RAP, then the next word's ING them. Okay, that's common in all these other countries. A lot of these other countries, they're like third world crap holes, okay? Don't take my word for it. Start studying them on the internet, okay? You hear all these Indian people want to move to the United States. You don't hear people from the United States saying they want to move to India, okay? You just don't hear it. I've never in my whole life known a single person that told me they wanted to move to India that moved to India. Not one, zero, okay? They've got this caste system, one of the lower castes, the Bangi or whatever you call them, the untouchables and all them. The Bangi, I don't even know if they're above the untouchables. I don't really know their caste system. Their job is to clean the toilets. They have to clean the toilets, and that's sort of their fate in life. And Gandhi's like, they should just accept their fate in life. He said people should follow their ancestral calling, meaning that if you're born in a low caste, you're in a low caste, and there's no hope of changing that. Okay? Gandhi supported all that. All right? He supported that apparently for his entire life. So it's not like he was one of these Christians who said all men are equal in the eyes of God. No, not at all. Okay? Let's make that clear. And there's a strict caste system in Hinduism, and then the Brahmins are the top one. And there's not necessarily any God involved in all this, okay? So the idea is saying it's the same as Christianity. That's BS, okay? Some other things about it. The lower caste, like the Bangi, they're not allowed into the religious places for prayer. They're considered scum, okay? They're not allowed into the same schools. They can't attend the same schools as people in higher caste. India is so racist, it's not even funny. So give me a break, okay? Everybody just wants to try to say that the white Christians are racist because they want to destroy the white Christian countries. That's all BS, okay? And Gandhi also had a lot of strange ideas about women. He sort of thought women, were sort of inferior and they belonged in the house. For example, when some women... He said that he often said if women were abused or raped by men, it was probably their own fault. In South Africa, 2 girls complained about being harassed by men, so he cut their hair off and said, yeah, that way you won't attract men anymore. He said that if an Indian woman got raped, she had lost her value as a human being. He said that fathers could be justified for killing their daughters who had been sexually assaulted for the sake of family and community honor. He said that women who used contraception were behaving like whores. He vowed celibacy for himself, and apparently he pressured underage girls like his grandniece to test his sexual patience, and he would sleep in bed naked next to them. Okay, that's kind of crazy, without touching them. Okay, so I don't quite understand all of that. I don't know all the detail. I'm no scholar of Gandhi. I'm no scholar of India. Okay, but what I am trying to say here is all this BS that Hinduism is like Christianity, that is completely untrue. Completely untrue. And another thing too, people try to say, oh, meditation is such a good thing. Meditation is BS, okay? You sit there, look at a wall and you say, Om. That can lower your stress level. That can be useful to calm you down. But, I studied tons and tons of geniuses and superachievers. One after another. Bach. I do everything for the glory of God, okay? Michelangelo, everything I do, I put my faith, my trust, my hope, my life in the hands of God. You hear that one after another. Isaac Newton spent more time studying the Bible. One after another, Christian, praying to God and honor God. Kepler, I'm just trying to see the thoughts of God after him. You'll see that over. I never heard of a single one say, oh, I meditated and that helped me achieve something. BS. Ashoka was this brutal, tyrannical dictator in India, and after he kicked the shit out of everybody and killed tons and tons of people, he just said, I'm converting to Buddhism. I'd like you to convert to Buddhism, okay, and to meditate. And what he wanted them to do was just shut up, to look inward, to look at the wall and say Om, okay, not to bother him. And if they bothered him, he would brutalize them, all right? So what I'm trying to say is all this sort of Eastern, you don't need God, just sit around and say Om, that's BS, okay? And I know tons of high IQ from these Asian countries, from India, but you know what? Proportion-wise, they don't create as many great achievements as the Western Christians do, and it's because their philosophy of life. And Vishal Mangalwadi said the same thing. He says the great achievements are much more likely to come from an Indian person once they've converted to Christianity, because it gives them a whole different attitude on life. He said a lot of Indian culture, I don't know exactly which specific aspect of their philosophy said was Maya, this idea that you can't know the world, it's not rational, it's not meaningful. In a lot of other Eastern countries too, you have some brutal dictatorship where anything you create or invent gets taken away from you. So there's no incentive to achieve at a higher level because it's just going to be taken away from you. So why bother trying to make some great achievement? Just make some money for yourself and your family and be happy with it, okay? And I also think that's partly why men do more than women, because a man wants to achieve, all right? We don't have babies. We don't even know if our own kids are ours for sure, okay? So a woman, that's her baby. She knows. It's been in her hands since the moment it was born, and that's her priority in life. And, up until birth control, women would have an average of 9 or 10 kids, okay? She's busy. Whereas a guy, and most guys can't even attract a woman. They're just on their own. So they're sitting there, they're thinking, they're dreaming, their creation would be like their achievement, okay? So that's why men achieve more in terms of science or artistic production. Look at all the great artists of the history of the world. There's not a single one that's a female, okay? Bev Doolittle made a kind of a beautiful art book. That's like the only one. I studied thousands and thousands of artists. And I know there's a couple females that were, decent at drawing, but they never got into the level of greatness. It requires objective, monomaniacal devotion for many, many years, okay? And it's just unlikely to happen with a woman, okay? You can say whatever you want. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, post it in the comments. I'd be happy to see it. I mean, the greatest female writers have been extraordinary. Ayn Rand and Coulter are the two best ones that I've ever come across, two great female genius writers. And everybody hates them. And that's the other thing, too. People talk a lot of nonsense, say, oh, women are just as smart as men. Okay, but fine. But they don't dedicate their life to becoming great at writing. They just don't. And the two greatest ones by far, Ayn Rand and Ann Coulter, they're magnificent. They're extraordinary geniuses. Everybody hates them. Oh, she's a bitch, she's a bitch, she's a bitch. That's actually how you know she's probably worth looking into and studying if everyone says she's a bitch, okay? If she was nice, that would mean she sucks, okay? So then they have all these fake female geniuses, Marilyn Vos Savant or Toni Morrison or some other person who they try to pretend, and then you just see this mediocre crap that's probably not even their work, okay? It's just a fact. All right, so let's continue on with Gandhi. He lived in South Africa for about 20 years, and he didn't believe that blacks were equal to people of Indian descent. In 1893, for example, he wrote, a general belief seems to prevail in the colony that the Indians are only a little bit better, if at all, than the savages, the natives of Africa. He felt that the blacks were barely human. Okay, in 1904, he wrote to the health officer in Johannesburg that the council must withdraw black Kafirs. Kafir is like an insulting term for blacks in South Africa, from an area where Africans lived alongside Indians. He felt they should not be mixed together, their populations, okay? He wrote about the mixing of black Kafirs with Indians. I must confess, I feel most strongly. His Indian biographer, Ashwin Desai, said that Gandhi felt the whites and Indians should be partners and they should rule over the blacks in South Africa. Gandhi believed that whites and Indians were higher up in the civilized scale than the Africans. And Gandhi supported higher taxes on the impoverished African people. Okay, that's the opinion of his biographer, Ashwin Desai. Okay, Gandhi said that God has no religion. He said that Hinduism is to a lot, well, he didn't say this about Hinduism, but when I read about it, according to Vishal Mangalwadi, another Indian writer, this guy is a great writer, Vishal Mangalwadi. He said that for the most part, Hinduism is atheist, okay? It's godless religion, okay? And to me, it's like, what kind of a religion has no God? But Buddhism is like that, okay? 5 out of 6 major schools of Orthodox Indian philosophy of Hinduism are atheist, okay? Openly atheist, okay? So that's a godless religion. The caste system, like I said, is built into Hinduism, the Varna hierarchy. The Brahmins are the top caste system. And then Gandhi says, those who say religion has nothing to do with politics, they don't even know what religion is. A religion that takes no account of practical affairs and does not help to solve them, the practical problems of the people, is not a religion. And I would say, actually, there is some truth in that statement. Religion, from the Latin word religare, legare is related to ligate, to tie the people together. Religion ties the people together. And the people have to have a religion. Like people say, oh, well, America doesn't have a religion. Bullshit. America has a religion, and it's called atheistic Darwinism. And atheistic Darwinism has been forced on the people. Initially, America was a Christian country. And now that atheistic Darwinism has been forced on them, that is being used as an excuse to force the people into slavery. Okay, and it's so obvious if you know anything about history and religion. If you go with Christianity, it is the friend of the little guy. It says you're creating the image of God. Everybody's equal in the eyes of God. Jesus said, that which you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Okay, it's to protect the little guy. If you have an appeal to Christ in Christianity, you can say the ruler, whoever they might be, has no right to treat you in such and such a way, and the people will respond to it and say, yes, this guy is correct. It respects the individual. It's all about respect for life. On the other hand, if you have atheistic Darwinism, what it says is might is right. Survival of the fittest. The ruler is always correct. You have no rights as an individual. You're just a talking monkey, a talking ape. You have zero rights. You need to shut up and do as you're told. And if you don't like it, you're going to get your butt kicked. Okay? That's what atheistic Darwinism says. There's nothing ambiguous about it. Okay? It says your life is meaningless. There is no God. There is no afterlife. You're just a livestock animal that talks, owned by the ruler. So shut the hell up and do as you're told. And I mean it. Shut up now. That's what atheistic Darwin is. Okay, and people think they're clever, saying, "Oh, atheism is intelligent." Well, if you think that you're nothing but a talking monkey, a talking animal, then that's what you believe. I mean, we don't need to get into all that right now, but I'm just telling you, those are the two choices for mankind. Because Hinduism is really a thing for India. Okay, it's not ever going to affect the whole world. All right. The two powerful religions in the world are atheistic Darwinism and Christianity. Okay, there's also, of course, Islam and Islam country, but Islam is never going to be the religion of all the people. Okay, and then the other ones are pretty small. Okay, Christianity is the biggest religion in the world, and the most people of any religion are that. Okay, then after that it's Islam, and then after that it's Hinduism, sort of Hinduism, and I don't know Buddhism. I don't know the percentage of all these things. Okay, so let's continue. We're almost done with Gandhi here. Gandhi said, Christianity in India is inextricably mixed up for the last 150 years with the British rule. I like your Christ, but I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ. All right, and he does have a point, because the British had atheistic Darwinism was really their underlying thought. They felt in the Victorian British, for example, that basically everyone else in the world was inferior to them. The English were the most powerful people in the world in the 1800s, and I'm half Irish, my father's side. They basically kept the Irish like slaves for about 1,000 years. The Irish are still like slaves to the English. The Irish are all just being side id. Okay, that's what's happening right now. They're flooding the place with foreigners who want to, remove the Irish from their own country, and it's being allowed to happen. They're even bringing in more and more people from Pakistan, making them officers of the ruler to control the people and to brutalize them. Okay, and nobody cares. All right, and Ireland is being destroyed, absolutely destroyed, and that's happening something similar to the other Western countries. They've opened up their you-know-whats. They call them the borders, and they're flooding them with military-aged men from other countries that hate the native people of these countries to destroy them. Okay? All right, well, getting back to Gandhi, what I'm trying to say here is that the Indian people were rightfully pissed off that the British brutalized them. They did. Okay? And they are actually worse to the Irish than they were to the people of India. But the attitude of the British was everyone is inferior to us. So they were brutal to the people in Africa. They were brutal to the people in Ireland. They were brutal to the people in India because they felt they were inferior. That the attitude of the English was that you're lucky to have us English superiors ruling you. And this has been a common thing all through the history of the world. The ruling group with the most military power tends to treat others as if they were inferior. And they love atheistic Darwinism because it enables them to say, look, might is right, we're superior to you, therefore you have to just shut up and do as you're told. Okay, and it's been like this for a long time. You go back to the ancient Greek, look up the island of Melos, M-E-L-O-S, and how they were treated by the Athenians. And the Athenians were the best city in all of Greece, and yet they too were brutal. Okay, so atheism is a dangerous thing for the little guy. That means he has zero rights. He's just a farm animal. Okay, Gandhi continues. If I had to face only the Sermon on the Mount and my own interpretation of it, I would not hesitate to say, oh yes, I am a Christian. You Christians look after a document containing enough dynamite to blow up all civilization to pieces, to turn the whole world upside down, and to bring peace to a battle-torn planet, but you treat it as if it is as though it were nothing more than a piece of paper. Yeah, and that's actually true. The Bible is the most powerful book ever written, and people, if they actually read it, it makes you want to be a Christian, okay? And if it's actually done right, where you just go by what Jesus said, people are never going to agree on the dogma of the Old Testament. They're never going to agree on a lot of the dogma in the New Testament. But everybody agrees on what Christ said. And that's what they should follow. That's what matters, what Christ said. That's why I'm not dogmatic about religion, because I know there's all these different subgroups that fuss about little things that don't really matter. What matters is what Christ said. And it's a system by which everybody could get along, the whole world could be at peace, and the whole world would be a lot more prosperous and happy. But rulers don't want it, because then they don't get to be gods. If there's no Christianity, then the ruler becomes like a god. Okay, and what I'm trying to say is Hindu's weak. It's a godless religion. They can't stop any ruler from doing whatever they want. Okay, so that's not going to happen. All right, other godless religions, they can't stop rulers from doing whatever they want. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and Vishal Mangawadi, like I said, he said the greatest thing that ever happened to India was that the Christian missionaries brought Christianity there. And the Christians I've seen do incredible things, especially the ones converted to Christianity. There's lots of competent doctors that are Hindu or Buddhist or whatever, okay? But I'm talking about great achievements, people that go above and beyond. And you don't see that many, despite all the high IQ Indians, and there's tons of them, you don't see them doing that many top-notch things, okay? And I think that's why, because like, who gives a rat's ass? Unless you have a religion that makes you push yourself, why bother? Okay, just make your money, enjoy your life, enjoy your family. Okay, other quotes by Gandhi. We're just about done here. The last couple lines here. Jesus to me is a great world teacher among others. One thing he said, if I had to face only the Sermon on the Mount and my own interpretation of it, I would not hesitate to say, yes, I am a Christian. So he basically said Christ was correct. And he also said if Christians actually behaved like Christ, everybody in the world would want to be a Christian. Okay. And he said, Jesus is a great world teacher, among others. He said, I consider Western Christianity and its practical workings a negation of Christ's Christianity. So he said, yeah, the way the British behaved towards the Indian. Like John Stuart Mill, who wrote On Liberty, he wanted liberty and freedom for the Englishmen, but he didn't want that for the Irishmen. He didn't want it for people of India. Okay, now here he says something that, I don't think is true. He said that the Allah of Islam is the same as the God of the Christians. That's actually true. The God of the Bible sort of is like the beginning of the three faiths. They call him the Abrahamic faith, if you will. All right, you know what those three are. Okay, but then he goes on to say that it's the same God as the Ishwar of the Hindus. But we just talked about Hinduism, according to Indian scholars, being primarily atheistic. So I'm no scholar of Hinduism. I don't know it. I'm not going to pretend I do. I don't even know that much about India, obviously. I just thought this was a little interesting. I kind of didn't have any quotes of Gandhi, but then I just looked this all up tonight, real fast. Okay, and I've heard all this stuff before. So I was just a little curious, so I looked it up. So anyways, for what that's worth,